No one leaves. No one's allowed to leave. You've got a break in a minute. It's my privilege and honor to introduce Jim from Jacobs. He's going to introduce himself anyway. Jim, the stage is all yours, my friend.
We have a slide button, dealy. Does that work? Yeah, go back. Green one. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And again, I'd like to thank everyone joining today. I'd like to thank Brain Exchange for giving us this opportunity to be together in the time where we weren't together for many years. And again, I echo a lot of the statements that you heard here about being together and connecting. And I think that's the core of what the metaverse will be and how we interact with things. So I struggle a little bit working through my presentation as we get towards the end of where we are today and deciding whether or not it needed to be restructured or needed to talk about something else, or really just frame what we were doing and how we're doing things and what we see as the future. So that's where I'm going to keep going with that, because I thought that was the most pertinent, and I want to challenge people with the ideas of where we can go with things. And taking existing technologies and some of the newer technologies like we see in the exhibit hall and pushing them. And I would say some of the most powerful solutions that our group has been able to come up with are things that were serendipitous, things that weren't like, hey, client A needs a solution that is this. It's been where client A comes to Jacobs, is working on a solution, and some of the team members come back and say, can we do this? Is this possible? I may have mentioned this story before, but I'll mention it again. I think it was one of the best stories very early on with XR, with Jacobs, where it's 2012. So we can imagine Oculus just got out of Kickstarter. There's really the game engines, Unity and Unreal, were still very early in development. A lot of other game engines were out there kind of just burgeoning, getting their feet wet in the market, and engineering companies weren't even doing things there. We had a large biopharma client come to us and tell us, can we do a hologram? And you can imagine what that was the Death Star in the middle of the table. And you take that Death Star apart and you start examining it. In this case, it would have been one of their manufacturing facilities. And we thought about that, and we think about, my background as an architect, was putting you in an environment where you can evaluate spatial organization, spatial relationships, and things like that. And so that's what you think at the outset. But we go, what if we did you one better? What if we actually put you in that environment before ever even's designed? And so we went 2012, got Oculus. We were looking at getting the omnidirectional treadmill, which I think today is still just getting its footing as far as freedom of movement. And we took that, we combined that together, or in that case, we only took the Oculus, we put the model together, we took it to their head of facilities, and really started to spark this conversation that continues the idea of the serendipity idea, which is when you bring a solution and a new technology, there are so many things that can give you ideas about where it can go. And what they sparked so much conversation specifically around not just the design of the facility and the human factor elements of that, but it also they think about the application and use of it beyond design visualization. They started talking about using it for regulatory purposes, where they have to pass certain concerns on positioning of equipment and materials and things like that. So it's very powerful use of that, and kind of our first story of where we started. So kind of jumped around a little bit. For those of you who don't know Jacobs is a global engineering solution provider, about 55,000 people in 40 countries. And I've been with Jacobs going on 24 years, but I still say every day I learn something that I never knew we did yesterday, that we've ever done. We helped design the Artemis spacesuit for the current space missions going to the moon and then to Mars. We are working on some of the largest infrastructure projects in the world, things like a Thames River, a sustainability infrastructure approach in England, to some of what we now call giga projects in Saudi Arabia, where unfathomable scale of future infrastructure, built environment, and things like that are coming to play. And the metaverse will play a large role in those. And we're helping define what that means. But again, just here, listening to the speakers on all the different things, we can see where metaverse, we're defining it. And that's important. And I think that's the key to what we do here. We bounce these ideas off each other. We define things. We may not get it right the first time. And Meta doesn't own it. It's going to be ubiquitous across the globe. So kind of a little bit of background on Jacobs. Talk a little about ecosystem that we're working with. We're the largest Autodesk licensor in the world. We're also some of the other large environments. So we're platform agnostic, meaning that we're not stuck with one environment, one hardware. In fact, our group is challenged with taking it into kind of looking at everything. And that's a struggle. And I heard a lot of struggles here on the headwinds about acquisition of hardware, acquisition of technology, and we have the same thing within our company. But what we continually do is to continue talking, building use cases, doing proof of concepts, and taking small things and making them bigger and evaluating them and providing that inclination to where things can go. So, again, speaking of definition, did the same thing. What is it? What is a Jacobsverse? How do we, as Jacobs, begin to leverage all of the IP, all of the data sets that flourish throughout our company that aren't connected? In the same way, it talks about connecting people. So what does it mean to connect all of this and then offer that in an equitable, broadened environment where you engage people, clients, communities globally and leverage all of that? And I think that's still something I'll honestly say that our company still struggles with those things. You think where we are today, we should be one of the forefront of, we have a lobby where people can go, an intranet, a platform, whether it be virtual, whether it be headset-based or a screen-based environment where people can go and connect to each other. We're still talking to each other like the old school. Oh, call Sue in Bellevue or call Joe in Dallas, and those people will connect you. And I think that's where the metaverse will really begin to formulate and change things on a global scale. And so, again, working through what I was thinking, what it could mean. Again, the core things like the committee, the panel just talked about, which is connection, community, and then data. And how do we provide knowledge through that network? So we have our kind of core motto, which is challenging today and reinventing tomorrow. And I'm going to kind of base a few of my topics on what we're doing today. And again, there are many of what you are all doing. Immersive design collaboration, using tools off the shelf. I kind of didn't really go into my roles. It's one role I have is I'm global technology leader for XR. So that's looking at adopting and instituting strategies across the board for clients and projects. And that's everything using off-the-shelf tools to building bespoke full VR experiences in Unity and Unreal. So we have a wide gamut of capability, but we want to use it all. We want to experience it all and then think and be critical about how we can apply it in the future. So I'm going to run through a couple samples of what the immersive design collaboration means and how we're using it. And then again, challenging it, which says, well, we're doing this now, but what does it mean for the future? Or how can we use it better in the future? Community engagement. I think we heard a little bit about this earlier in some of the panels also, about how do you take and use extended reality, metaverse principles in engaging communities. And we're doing that across the board in a variety of things. And then lastly, I have one of the things we're doing just kind of currently right now, and many people here spoke about it today, but virtual reality training. And I've got a sample here that I think is a pretty powerful use of how virtual reality can be used in training purposes. First, talk to immersive design collaboration. So we have remote assist tools where, again, we're going in the field. Again, during COVID, a lot of these things were thought about them for 10 years or so. Reality put everything on us. And so we immediately went and started acquiring these technologies, putting them in the field, starting to allow the teams to go ahead and do, in this case, we have remote assist. I'm going to kind of wash through some of these videos in the background, but ability for people to remotely collaborate, be on site when people couldn't be on site. You've heard about that here. I think the future is the idea that this links to reality capture. So at some point you have a data set in your environment, your native BIM environment, that links to reality capture, that links to live data. And I'll say that I think on the basis of a lot of these things, we have so many disparate data sets throughout the design environments, engineering environments, and so forth that aren't connected. And we're talking about IoT sensors, real-time data, and other things that aren't connected to these native environments. We see a huge opportunity through things like Unity and Unreal, where you use UI UX principles and you develop a custom user interface or a better way for clients to manage their assets, understand their current situations, and build for the future. So we see the change of digital delivery as being not just your static construction documents or design reports and things like that. It becomes a toolkit for your clients to better understand who and where they are and how they can build for the future. Another tool, this is kind of off-the-shelf tool that we're using, which is recently acquired by Autodesk, is called The Wild. So it's immersive design collaboration. Multiple people, either headset-based environment or screen-based environment, can all jump into a lobby. It has common live link data to your BIM data sets and so forth, and you can jump back and forth. What I think is interesting about this too is kind of now don't challenge what today is. So that's the model on the desktop. Everyone can use that piece of software. But what's interesting about it is there's avatars in there, and avatars begin to create that connection to humanity. But I think what they've done here is, I call them Escher people. You have the Escher people, which have inclination to movement, space, hand position, face, and when you talk, there's actually some movement of the bands around the face. So I see that as being like an appropriate current technology level of implementation of an avatar in a virtual world that makes sense for right now. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about reinventing tomorrow, and we're working with Epic Games, and of course, many of you might know Epic Games has released MetaHuman, which is ultra photorealistic avatar-based thing. So that's going to be down the road, but that's something else. But again, I'll speak to a little more in that piece, but that to me is something that's important about how we implant ourselves within different metaverses or within different experiences. We're going to have an avatar-based management tool that will be ubiquitous across many people. So or in platforms. So you'll have your work avatar, you'll have your social avatar, you'll have your game avatar, you'll have your different things, and there'll be a way in which each one of those, just like in here, provides you a unique and direct application to connect and communicate in those environments. Another one, community engagement. So speak to a little bit about the 360 virtual pseudo room things that seem to pop up and were very applicable right at the outset of COVID. When everything got shut down, people all went home. Projects didn't cease, projects didn't stop, people kept going, things kept happening. And in that sense, what we'd always talked about this kind of engaging environment of not replacing, but supplementing the one-to-one physical environment. And so in many cases, what we've done here is you take an environment for an infrastructure project or a community project, and you provide a 360 experience for them to use on their phone. It could be headset-based, but mostly these are screen-based. But this important principle of this is, these are the start. This is the start of the metaverse, tools like this. Get people immersed in a 3D realm that gives you ability to access information much as you would in a physical realm, but then it provides so much more because it's a virtual world. So in many cases, these are very successful. We found that most of the communities involved in these processes or these projects experienced up to a 20x response based on the experience. So you had a thing where previously, pre-COVID, you'd have a meeting in a school somewhere on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and a community that is, say, 50,000 people, and they get 10 people to show up. Well, now they're getting 2,000, 3,000 to engage virtually. But now to kind of speak to what that is today and challenging it is there's no people in there. Where are the people? It's information, it's the space, it's architecture, but it's not people. So how do we begin to introduce the idea of humanity into this? So what we've done in some of the more recent ones is we've actually where we green screen film the speakers of different parts of that, and we put them composite back into the web experience. So now when you roll across it, they're talking to you. But it's still a bit static. What else could we do? Well, we just talked about avatars. What about having a live avatar where you had somebody there on shift base during certain periods that you could talk to? So now you're taking that community member who may be browsing the web at 7 o'clock at night or whatever when they get home from work and trying to understand what the new road that's going down next to their home, what that's going to impact them. Well, now they can talk to somebody and create that human connection across that. So we're working on ways where we take this away from being a guided 360 experience to being fully immersive real time, and then introduce the idea of live real-time avatars in that environment. Next one is an augmented reality, again, a community engagement experience where, again, we're trying to do design visualization, but yet we're also trying to start to talk about how do you leverage the simulated and design tool structure in the background. So in this case, we have a project that's in El Paso, Texas. It's about a 9-mile roadway project through the downtown area. And what we've been able to do is we've been able to take the micro-method simulation from what's a tool called VisSim, which is actually traffic analytical simulation, and we link that into the Unity environment. So now when the public goes through, they can look at the different interchanges and intersections at different times of day and see volumes of traffic. They can understand what it's like if you have a no-build condition. Look, in 2040, the volumes have increased by 50%, and now you can see that. And so that's today. So challenging that would be, well, that's informative, but what happens if what happens if that community changes? What happens if it grows demographically by 50%? What does it do for electrical vehicle charging stations and things like that? So there's all these other opportunities to take these tools and provide not just design visualization, but further advance that. So that's kind of community engagement. The last one I want to kind of harken back to the last one previously, because we had a tool that was really powerful that won a couple awards a couple years ago for augmented reality in a Georgia water project. And that project was a tool we developed in augmented reality for students at Parkview High School. And that app, and it's actually on our Jacobs stores, both Apple and Google, so go pick it up and try it yourself. It was a community engagement tool and teaching tool to help the students understand what was going on with the stream restoration next door. And so, again, design visualization and teaching tool. So it kind of inklings into what XR could do for teaching. But again, challenging that would be, and we talked to the client about this when we got it deployed the first time, and you start seeing the students, their eyes pop up when you take a topography plan and the model pops off of it. There's that initial understanding of what's going on in that environment. But what if we go one step further? We actually have the trees growing on that site over a period of time, so you'd understand the impact visually about where the trees are today and where they'll be in 15 years. But what if you took a social aspect of that? What if you engage the students and had them say, tag a tree, and that's your tree, and now you watch that tree grow, and it becomes part of who you are as a person and your connection to the environment. So there's all these opportunities by combining these different aspects, and again, I see these as meta aspects, to provide connection to the environment and understanding of our world around us. So jumping into this one really quick, a very recent project we just started, again, born out of a kind of a necessity where things were brought to us and asked the question, is this possible? Can we do this today? In this case, we're doing a virtual reality training tool for first responders. What they do right now currently, as far as multi-coordination across multiple different avenues or different municipalities and agencies, would be they go out to a training facility, a conference room, or things like that. They roll out a large plan of a roadway, and they use matchbox cars to talk about the law enforcement. How do they arrive on the scene? The fire department. How do you interact? Where do you park? Where do you do things? What a better use to do this than to do it in an XR environment. So what we did is we basically created a whole world generation, accident generation environment tool where you can pick some static scenes, go in, pick those scenes, and develop the actual scene. And then we can use principles like POV, view shed, and things like that. And you'll see that in here. But it turns out to be this is very powerful because now it gives the users and the trainer a way to have people visualize beyond that kind of model-based or physical-based car thing. And as this has evolved, it also has a weather system, accurate time system, and we did this as it's called an MVP, a minimum viable product, and it's out there now, and we're looking to evolve it. So now, again, challenging today, we've done this now, but what's the future look like? Well, again, in talking about the metaverse, is that we like to get this out to every agency, first responders all over the place because it saves lives. It provides an opportunity to connect these disparate resources in different agencies. But the thing that when I first started looking at this and looking at what we did, right now we have no ability to save. It's a RAM-based tool. So when they shut the app off, you lose the scene you created. Well, we want to create a library of all the accidents that all the agencies would be able to use, and then leverage that for other agencies so they can see what happens. And then Jacobs also has broad range of kind of different resources globally that do different things. Like we have KeyW, a very large remote sensing company, does some of the largest data sensor gathering in the world. And we'd like to be able to leverage their LiDAR data sets in this environment. So you could pick actually where the accident happened and put the accident in that scene and then do a reconstruction for either for after action or for planning for the future. So again, I think this is really pertinent. I think what we're doing right now too is beyond that, is to talk about simulated traffic. Let's simulate what happens as far as that way they can plan better for the future in these environments. So again, something that kind of came up within the last 3 or 4 months, powerful use of that technology. And I kind of wrap here on reinventing tomorrow. And we talked about a lot of these principles already, but again, I'd love to hear other people's ideas, love to engage on this, but I see, you've heard a little bit of talk about property and Metaverse, and what is Decentraland or NFT related to Roblox or OpenSea and these, what will be the kind of the home base or the main street of the future. Well, that's still very early, but we're looking right now to putting something there. Is it the right thing? Is it the right meta? We talked about a or the Metaverse. The panelists talked about that too. I agree that I think we'll eventually have the Metaverse, but we'll probably start with Metaverses all over the place. And how do we put ourselves in a location where we provide that connection in a community? I would, as I've already mentioned about virtual communities, I would love to see Jacobs to have a lobby. We need a lobby where we can go in, connect with people, connect with disparate resources, and again, really begin to take the power of leveraging that data. I kind of put here common data environment or single point of truth, or what I look at is like the Jedi archives. Can you imagine the power of all that data being leveraged for all these different projects and communities? It could be amazing. And so that could be the kind of Jacobs lobby we develop. Are we going to do it tomorrow or the next day? I don't know, but I see that coming for us. And then we've spoken a lot here too about digital twins, and I see the same thing. I see where we can take these principles of XR, leverage them for equitable environment, connection to communities, teaching, providing that human development of species across time. And I think there's so much power to delivering tools and learning environments than delivering documents. And I think that's kind of the future of digital delivery and things like that. So I don't know exactly where I am in time. I kind of just, okay. But again, I really thank everybody for the opportunity. I'd love to talk to everybody. I think just talking and engaging on these environments is where we go and where we move for the future.
Jim, that was awesome. Round of applause. Thank you. I agree, that was great. Any questions from the audience? I've got a quick one.
Okay.
Oh, was there someone there?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm just curious, what is the base software that you're using for both your virtual rooms and for that amazing training, that accident training app that you've got there?
Okay. Well, thank you, Stephen. What we've got is we're using on the 360 realm. We use everything from Marzipano, which is a JavaScript environment for 360s, to some of the pure webs and Eagle Vision 3Ds. For real time. So that's the community rooms. But we find we want to create the most broadest usage capability. When we first started doing it all real time for community engagement, people just don't know how to move with WASD, and the next generations will all just know that by heart. You know how to move in 3D, but current generations don't. So we thought that's why the Marzipano 360s seem to be just easy, low-hanging fruit. It's accessible across all platforms, very uniform. As far as the training application, that's built in Unity. And so and again, kind of speaking a little bit, I spoke to the ecosystem up front. We are not one Unity or Unreal House. We're kind of both. We want to explore both. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, but that's built in Unity.
Can I just add quickly to that? Because you talked about all your partners. Are you doing a lot of this development in-house? Is it a 50-50 split between in-house and third parties? Or how does your kind of development capability look?
Okay, yeah, I skipped over that start. So I'm part of the digital delivery group, which is more of a think tank side of things, and that's the global leader for XR. But I have a group called the Visual Media Group, which is within Jacobs. It's about 30 artists, technologists globally, about 20 here in the US, 10 in the UK. And that's our kind of core. Great, Love the UK. In fact, I'm going there next month, so be in London. That group has about 10 real-time developers in it, but it also has mobile application developers. We have 3D artists, and the backgrounds are very diverse. I have a physicist on board, I have an industrial designer, I have a fine arts major, and I think that diversity too brings an incredible opportunity for these teams to bring thought to our projects.
Jim, thank you very much. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.